Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the All Portable Discussion Zone, a bi-weekly live stream all about amateur radio portable ops. My name is Charlie, and my call sign is November Juliet 7 Victor. With me this morning are the show's two co-hosts, Brian, W7JET, and Dan, KC7MSU. And I'm also pleased to introduce to you today's guest, Eddie from South Africa, ZS6BNE. And of course, as always, we have the regular characters in the chat room. Thank you so much for joining us in there. I hope we have an opportunity to answer some of your questions. So please go ahead and drop them in the chat, and we'll do our best to answer them. And also don't forget that this show is converted to a podcast about 24 hours after the show airs. And so you can find that on most podcast players. All right, guys, let's get going. Let's get caught up on what everybody's been up to the last, I don't know, it's been a few weeks anyway since we last met. I don't know. Let's see, random. Why don't we go with Brian first this time? What do you say, Brian?
Well, let's see. Been kind of busy. I did a bunch of activations in the last few weeks. I can't remember if I've been on since we saw the wolf. Yeah, I think I'm pretty sure we talked about the wolf, right? When we saw the gray wolf when we were in Sedona or Sholo, excuse me. Brad and I visited the site of where it all started for you last week. We did Mount Pelee together, so that was cool. I've not been back there since that activation. So that was the first time I've activated it since I activated it with you all those years ago for the first time. So it was kind of fun going up there, and the hike was good. The weather was beautiful. Didn't see much wildlife though. I was kind of surprised. It was, we were the only ones out there. I mean, saw no one at all. I was in New York, specifically White Plains yesterday. Flew in on Thursday to go for some work stuff, and flew back out last night. Got in late last evening. It was a beautiful day there. Flew over the Long Island Sound. Did a little jaunt around Block Island. For those of you that follow me on the Facey Space, you probably saw some photos of that. And be going back out there after Thanksgiving to fly that airplane home. And when I do that, I will most likely be doing some aeronautical mobile, and I'll be beaconing APRS. So we'll throw that out there when that's going on. I'll be going from the New York area all the way back to Arizona with a Beechcraft bonanza. So that's what's been going on with me.
Cool. Sounds like a lot. When you get squared away with that beaconing for the APRS for that plane when you're bringing over, and you're going to do that aeronautical mobile, make sure you text me your information. I'll try to put a comment up here on the YouTube so people can have that information. Yeah, I'm sure I know you're on social media, but I'll put it on all my social media too. Be cool.
I'll try and be a little more creative than I usually am, and maybe I'll actually turn the camera on the phone and say something really fast from Westchester County Airport, so I can dazzle everybody with my charisma and charm.
Yes, of course. Okay, Dan, what do you got?
Well, finally been out since the last show, and been out bagging a couple of summits, which was a nice change of pace. Went out and did Pinal a couple weeks ago. Did pretty good there. Got quite a few summits, which was nice. And then you and I went out yesterday, and we did, what did we do? Carroll Springs and Timber Camp. So that was a lot of fun. We operated QRO and got quite a bit of DX, ended up with 10 DX contests, which was really nice, including got South Africa. Woo! So I am excited. So some QSL cards going out in the mail here in the next week. And also went and did Timber Camp. That was pretty nice. Got 4 summits on Timber Camp, so I was pretty happy. So thanks everybody who chased yesterday and chased me on Pinal previously. So it's been a couple weeks of some fun activity in amateur radio.
Yeah, I was almost from the beginning pretty jealous about that South Africa contact. I wasn't really quite sure what was going on until on the other end he said, "I am really happy about this contact. It makes me so happy." And I'm like, okay, this must be a pretty good one then.
Yeah,
cool.
It's fantastic.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, I was with Dan. Before that, just backing up just a little bit, my wife and I went with 2 other couples to St. George, Utah, which is southwestern Utah, and we just we got an Airbnb and just had fun up there, just kind of getting away. We did some kind of some history tours, and we also went to that Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints open house, and toured that temple. It was really interesting. So that was kind of a few weeks ago. Then last weekend, I think it was, Sandy and I went to the top of SP Crater, which if you don't know what SP stands for, it's a very interesting name, and you should go check out my video and you'll figure it out. But that was a really fun one. It's very interesting. It's just this cinder cone that we hiked to the top of, and the activation zone was just kind of all the way around the rim of the volcano, so to speak. It's a good time. And then yeah, we went down. I got quite a few DX contacts too. We just got on that window. We made sure we were set up and ready to go at 8 o'clock our time, which is 1500 Zulu. That seems to be the sweet spot, especially October, November, December, where you can really get good DX. And so 10 meters, man, was great. I had, I think, around 18 DX contacts myself. And then we did timber camp. And on timber camp, I used the Elecraft KH1 and took it for a test drive. I have a video I'll probably post here sometime. We're going to be doing Thanksgiving and stuff, so I don't know when I'm going to post it, but I have all the video for that. So, it sounds like we've all been pretty active. Eddie, what have you been up to?
We're busy with a CW drive in South Africa, trying to get people up and running doing CW. We don't have very many CW operators here. Mike ZS6MSW, he's quite passionate about it, and I support him. So what we did this week, we said, okay, well, we'll move out into the field and we'll send one word of a sentence. That's to try and get people out into the field and to send something via CW. So the very next day, you can't wait to hear what the next word is so that you can eventually find out what the sentence is. So tonight was supposed to be word number 4. So I said, well, I can't make it tonight because I've got an appointment with Red Summit RF. So they'll have to wait to find out the next word. So it seems to provide a little bit of excitement for the guys and to try and attract them to CW, because I believe that's where the radio amateurs DNA is definitely with CW. It's not an outdated mode. We got to keep people doing that. Charlie, I've seen you on your videos sending CW with a paddle with the left hand. It makes me feel uncomfortable.
Yeah. I'm left-handed. It's interesting. I don't want to interrupt what you're saying here, but just real quick, I guess I do want to interrupt. I am left-handed, and I figured that there's going to be opportunities for me to use another person's paddle. And I figured I might as well just use it the same way everybody else has it set up. That way I can easily, without having to make any adjustments, just go to somebody else's paddle. Like in field day, it happens all the time in field day. Brian has his paddle set up. The only thing I have to do is turn the paddle the other way, and then, just kind of just angle it differently, and we're good to go. That's the reason I learned it that way. I don't know if it's the good way or not, but I do know, yeah, a lot of people have mentioned it's kind of a little, makes them a little.
It's highly entertaining to watch.
It's actually quite strange watching other people sing on a paddle, because I think your brain works in a particular way when you use a paddle. You might go right for dashes and other people might go right for dots.
Yeah.
But to look at somebody else can confuse you a little bit. But it becomes an automatic thing when you use a paddle by yourself. And it's nice for 20 words per minute. I don't like to go maybe 25 words a minute, but I think that's nice. All-round is about 22. But we try to use a hand key, especially out in the field. Because I find with the side tone, if the wind's blowing, sometimes with a paddle, you don't hear that side tone too easily, and you might miss a dot or a dash and send incorrect CW. So using a hand key, that feedback, that physical feedback is a lot more effective than a paddle in windy conditions, in noisy conditions.
By hand key, are you referring to like a straight key, like a
straight key?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, very interesting.
That's my key of choice now.
Yeah. Can I ask a follow-up question on that, on what you're talking about here? So, You said something about being in the field. So is that for radar or for something else? Or you just go out and do something in the field when this whole thing with learning that, getting that next word?
That where I stay, I never work from the shack really, unless I really have to, because I find in an environment where you got people living, it's very, very noisy. So I like to. Right next door to where we stay, I've got a big 1.6 hectare stand, and I take a walk down to. We've got a wetland as well, so I walk down to the wetland, and there I've got an end fed standing amongst the reeds and a chair, and I go and sit there, and I take my little rig with me and straight key, and we have a relatively quick CW conversation. Yesterday, I had 2 contacts, and each took 15 minutes because we have a little bit of a chat at 12 to 15 words a minute as well, just to build up that excitement and that feeling of a team supporting each other through CW. That's our drive now. We drive CW. That's our main drive at this stage.
That's great. I love that. I didn't expect that we were going to talk about this, but Dan, Brian, and I all really are firm believers in trying to promote CW and Morse code and get people to use it. So that's absolutely amazing and great. Good for you guys. Yeah. Okay. So anything else before we move on to maybe some of the other questions we had for you? So Eddie, do you have anything to add before we go on to the other questions?
No, you can continue with the questions. I'm totally, for our viewers, I'm totally unprepared here. I'm expecting any questions to come my way, and I'm going to answer them.
Yeah. That's the way we roll here. So that's just the way we asked it to be. So good. All right. Well, so I mean, let's just find out a little bit more about you and your past. Can you talk a little bit maybe about your personal life, maybe where you grew up, where you went to school, how many are in your family, kind of that type of stuff, just to get going and help us get to know you a little better?
Well, in primary school, I was already interested in electronics, and my cousin and I, we used to send SOS to each other with a small battery and a little globe, and we'll tap out and then my dad took me into town and he helped me buy a couple of components to build a little crystal set with a diode, and I wound the coil and had a little piece of wire hanging. Whatever frequency they were was unknown at that stage. And that was in primary school. Then around about the middle of high school, I was listening on the radio one Sunday morning after my uncle had given me an old AM valve set, and I heard the South African Radio League's weekly bulletin, and they asked if you're interested, write them a letter. In those days, there wasn't email and internet and things like that, so wrote them a letter, and I became a listening member. I've still got my certificate, which I'm quite proud of.
Wow.
And I decided I'm going to do night classes. My dad took me into Johannesburg. We stayed in Alberton, which is about 30 kilometers away from the center of Johannesburg. And I did night classes for about 6 months, wrote the exam on the technical side and also regulations. That's how we do it in South Africa. Those years we had 2 licenses. It was a Zulu Romeo license or a Zulu Sierra license. Zulu Sierra or ZS license was an unrestricted license, but you had to do Morse code. Now, my younger brother, I think he's watching YouTube now as well. Hi, Bob. Him and I used to go through the list of Morse code signals, but we did it all the wrong way, because you're supposed to hear the sound, not read the dots and dashes. So they kind of made it a little bit difficult for me to learn Morse code, but I went into Johannesburg around about, I think it was, and you went to the post office, and the postmaster would take you for your Morse code test. And I passed my 12 words per minute Morse code test, and I got my ZS license a month later. And that is when I was still in high school.
Wow. And where was that at? Was that in South Africa?
That was in South Africa, yeah. I've always been in South Africa. I've never left the country. I haven't left its borders either. So South Africa has been my homeland since day one.
Very good. Okay, cool. Any questions or even follow-up questions from Brian or Dan?
Good, Brian.
No, go ahead, Dan.
So I was kind of curious, what's it like going to school in South Africa? I mean, how is it organized? In the United States, it's elementary, it's junior high, it's high school, but I don't know if it's much different there or not.
I think it's probably quite similar. We have what we call primary school, and in those days it was from grade 1 up to standard 5, and then you went to high school for another 5 years. That's standard 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, and then the last year is called matric. And it's still very similar now, although they call the standards grades now. So the standard 10 or matric is now grade 12 in the new South African way of talking about it. But I would say lots of people say the level of education in South Africa is not good. But I've got a grandson that's is busy writing his matric exams now. And if I look at the maths questionnaire that he had, I wouldn't be able to do that maths, really. They do advanced stuff, advanced chemistry, advanced geography. Nothing wrong with the education system as far as I'm concerned. I think they do quite well now.
Good. Then I would imagine it's after that kind of stuff, then it's off to university and things. I don't know what the universities are like there, but I know here we've got one fairly close by, and it's very, I don't know, they're really big into electronics. They have a very large electronics program here.
When I left school, I went to the army for 2 years, and after I came back from the army, I had the opportunity to join the post office in South Africa, and I had excellent training through them for 3 years, which is in the telecommunications industry and also doing electronics and logics and things like that. And only a few years later, I decided to go to university. In South Africa, we call it UNISA. It was a very, very good, let's say, distance learning university at that time, and I spent 5 years there doing an IT diploma. Probably still good. We've got quite a couple of universities in the Cape, in Pretoria, in Potchefstroom, here in Mahikeng, very, very close to where I stay. So there are a couple of universities, and I think their training is great.
Fantastic.
Do you have anything, Brian? Oh, you're muted. Sorry.
All right, I'm that guy. We got that out of the way. So I was going to ask Eddie, how about your professional life a little bit in your work history and some of the your background in that area?
Brian, I was a technician for 3 years at the post office where I did my training, and thereafter I joined cement factories as an instrumentation technician. That was quite challenging because of very, very dusty environments. And then I joined Philips, doing telecommunications as well, the PABX systems, for about 5 years. And then an opportunity came up to join a very large company in the town that I stay in, by the name of NWK now, and I started there as a computer technician, and went into the software field by starting to work on an IBM mainframe, but on the software side, or systems programmer. And then I did natural database and database administration. And my last 15 years, I spent as a technology manager in the IT department. And that was really great. I loved working with people, and the technical guys under me. I hoped I gave them good leadership. And I retired early, about 2015. And then I went back to them as a or web-based programming to convert their systems to browser-based systems. And that's where I got the experience to write a system which I call the Cool, which is inspired by RaDAR as well. But maybe we'll get to that now.
Yeah, I think we probably will. I've actually seen that the Cool, and it is cool.
Thank you.
As I say, so your professional life definitely complemented the hobby world for you as well.
Absolutely, I would say that amateur radio got me through life. It opened up doors for me, most certainly. It allowed me to be that one step ahead, which is really great. And I think even nowadays as well, sometimes I feel I should have spent more time, training myself in the electrical field, because a lot of work available now with the power failures that we're having in South Africa, and people are putting in inverters and solar panels and things like that, but very, very regulated. You are not allowed to work on that type of equipment unless you absolutely are qualified to do so, which is a good thing. But I installed my own, and my ham radio experience, electronics background, certainly gives me the ability to do that, and I understand it fully. But by regulation, you're not really allowed to do it. So,
right. So when you were younger, I know, like for me, when I was younger, I was the kid that was always taking things apart, whether I was supposed to or not. Were you that guy when you were young? Because that's how I learned about a lot of things, was taking things apart with a screwdriver that hopefully were unplugged first.
I was certainly that guy, Brian.
Yeah.
I think my mom and dad sent me to school very early. I was 4 years old when I went to primary school. So I took my dad's Wi-Fi apart, and I took my mom's sewing machine apart. So a very interesting thing, now that you mentioned that, and my brother, probably listening now, will understand this. We had a swimming pool, but it had just normal pipes for the inlet and the outlet. And my buddy also had a swimming pool, and he had a proper weir. So my brother and we decided to cut the hole in the side of the pool and build our own weir. And my dad wasn't angry about that. He actually said, "Okay, guys, well, it didn't work, but let's do a proper job of that on the weekend." That was in high school.
Very good.
That's great.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a common thing with amateur radio operators. It seems like everybody took things apart in the youth and learned sometimes the hard way how to put them back together. So that's a great thing.
Oh, cool. All right. Well, let's. I guess the next question. Let's just roll into the next thing, which is, give us a little background on how you arrived at creating this program, RaDAR. Because we'll talk about RaDAR here, maybe closer to the end of the program, and kind of how it works and stuff like that, and you can explain what that means and all that. But what kind of led you to the point where you decided to create the program?
Charlie, it was quite a couple of years ago, around about 2006. I had this slogan, "Shack in a Sack." That was like carrying your shack in a sack, literally. And we all do that now. And we had a lot of followers then. And at that stage, I was being part of the South African Radio League's radio technology in action presentations that they were giving right throughout the country. And we were coming back from Cape Town. That's where ZS1 Whiskey Charlie stays, I think, very close to that, after doing a radio technology in action display. And myself and Hans van Groenendaal, he's ZS6 Alpha Kilo Victor, is very much involved. He's actually a very healthy but elderly guy now, but he's still very, very active in the upper echelons of the South African Radio League. And we landed in Johannesburg, which is now called Oliver Tambo, used to be Jan Smuts Airport. And, Hans, the previous night, said, Eddie, we need to have a more professional name of this shack in a sack. So as we landed at Oliver Tambo, I walked up to Hans, and maybe it was the environment, but I said, how about we call this activity RaDAR, Rapid Deployment Amateur Radio, and that is where the slogan started. And a little while after that, I was presented with the Hall of Fame at the South African Radio League, especially for the development of RaDAR, which actually went international, especially in the USA and also in Europe. We had many, many followers in South Africa as well, but that's waned off a little bit, unfortunately, but we're trying to build it up again. And that is the purpose of the Cool as well, and also these word games that we're starting to play in the evenings to try and bring people back to the RaDAR idea. I'm so glad that, for example, my friend Greg and his buddies there in the USA, Greg in for KGL, that has started the RaDAR Rally, because they really take RaDAR and, like you say, they combine it with POTA and SOTA. And that's really great to see that RaDAR, that initial idea, going out into the world and still surviving now, which is fantastic. And I hope after this presentation as well that people will be inspired even further to take it on, because it is a little bit different. The initial idea of RaDAR was, take your shack out into the field and walk 1 kilometer and go and deploy there and make your contacts. And that idea became part of our QRP contests and also our field day contests, which is very, very nice as an ultralight category. So they do that in those contests. But then RaDAR still had to be different, otherwise RaDAR was still the same as a QRP contest or a field day contest. And I introduced movements to make it unique. And my first tests on that was actually 1 contact per 1 kilometer moved. But of course, not everybody's going to be able to do that. So I shifted it down to 5 contacts for every deployment and allowed different methods of transport, because not everybody's want to do it in their vehicles or on a bicycle or use a canoe. And we even included wheelchairs, because a friend of mine, Roger ZS3 Romeo Charlie, he helped me with the Wikipedia. I think we still got a Wikipedia on RaDAR, because he's very good with words and things like that. So we include wheelchairs, and the original RaDAR diagram includes all these methods of transport. So it became something, and because RaDAR had to be different, and it still is different, fortunately.
Yeah, it is. Okay, so yeah, I have a few follow-up questions, but let me see if Brian or Dan have any follow-up questions on that before we move into some of the others. About Dan first. Do you have anything?
No, I'm good, Charlie.
Okay, Brian.
I'm good as well, Charlie. You
Okay.
take it, man.
All right. Okay. One of the questions I had was, what if you participate in RaDAR? What skills does participation facilitate for you? In other words, if you want to do RaDAR, you obviously it benefits you and because it builds up your skills. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, I think every radar deployment or every radar challenge that one takes part in, it's a challenge to yourself because there's no certificates that you get or prizes or anything like that. Is, can I do it better next time? And you find out what antennas work for you, what equipment works for you, what power supplies work for you, what power levels work for you, what weights. You guys were talking about pack weights before the presentation started, and that becomes a very big factor. And I've gone down to the absolute minimum. I try to promote as well that um, a radar operator is someone that is sent out into an environment. It doesn't matter what the environment looks like. You should be able to take what comes because you can't plan for everything. And to pass information back in a very accurate way. And that is why I introduced the 10 character grid locator, that you pass that grid locator back. And on the cool, if you enter those logs and you enter the grid locators correctly, then they automatically get snapped and you get a point for that. The flag is raised, and you're actually marked online that your QSO details are absolutely accurate and the grid exchanges is absolutely accurate. So the main point of RaDAR is to be able to go out, communicate from anywhere, and pass information back very, very accurately without any hums and ahs. It's more about the quality of the communication than the quantity.
Does the radar program make a distinction, for example, between types of deployment? Like, for example, if you were operating QRP versus QRO, 100 watts versus, say 5 watts, is there different like classes or?
Not really, no. It's because it's up to the operator himself if he wants to carry a 100-watt radio or a QRP radio, but he must also realize what the effects of that is going to be. I've actually done a radar ops carrying my ICOM 7200, which is pretty heavy, and you've got to carry a big battery with you as well.
Battery.
And it was a successful ops, but then you realize, to carry all this weight, and you have to move after every 5 kilometers, five contacts. You have to move 1 kilometer if you're on your feet. And if you're on a bicycle, you have to move 2 kilometers. And if you're on a canoe as well, 2 kilometers. I didn't like the vehicle movements too much, because it's almost like somebody going mobile. But my ideas for radar was really an on-foot operator. But then you must travel light, you must travel fast as you possibly can. It's a physical challenge. It's and also a technical challenge because you must be clued up as a radio amateur. You must know what antennas work. And, so QRP certainly worked for me. I ran an FT817ND and a Z817 ATU LDG for 10 years before I unfortunately sold it. And that is the best rig one can ever take on radar and possibly even SOTA or POTA as well. But certainly that radar meant a lot to me for a decade at least.
Yeah. So let me pull something up here. You mentioned the RaDAR rally, and I brought up a page here that talks about the RaDAR rally. We just had one November 4th, it looks like, right here. And can you talk a little bit about how that's different from, or the same, or how that kind of fits into the program, I guess?
Charlie, the RaDAR rally is driven by Greg in 4KGL to continue the ideas of RaDAR. And there I see Chetel, he's doing his second, or he probably did his second RaDAR challenge. And there's all my friends in the USA that are very loyal supporters of RaDAR, and I love to watch their Bob. I've seen there, and he's done some very, very interesting videos. And yeah, Lucy from the UK, what a lady. She has gone through the thick and thin of RaDAR. And one thing that Lucy suggested at one stage, as we were looking for a saying, what is RaDAR? And she suggested daring to be different. And I think that sums up RaDAR very, very well. Thank you, Lucy, if you're watching.
Yeah. So how does the rally work, and what's the purpose of it, the RaDAR rally?
I watched the recent videos that Greg submitted, and they combine it a lot with SOTA, which is great. You can hear them calling CQ SOTA, CQ POTA, and CQ RaDAR. So they exchange POTA references numbers. I see the grids. Because RaDAR is probably not that well known, and it's quite a unique way of communicating, and the initial idea is to exchange grid locators, but not everybody exchanges grid locators. I believe some prefer not to. So I think Greg's ideas is, well, if they don't want to exchange a grid locator, then exchange your town name or anything else, as long as you make the contact. And a couple of years ago, POTA had RaDAR related certificates. You had the cheetah and the lion, and which Greg also was part of developing in the USA. That has changed a little bit now, but the RaDAR rally is really a very similar way of continuing the ways of RaDAR and the way of operating the movement issue of operating amateur radio.
Okay, good. And then let's see, I have another thing here. Just getting back to the thing that this piece of software that you developed. It's looks like it's a web interface, but can you tell? So what is the purpose of Cool then again? How would one use this page?
Okay, the Cool is an acronym that was mentioned by my friend Anthony ZS6 Alpha Romeo Whiskey. It used to be called the OCL, the Online Community Logbook, but we changed it to the Cool because it's quite a nice acronym, and that stands for the Community Online Open Logbook. And my emphasis there is on open. That everybody that actually logs on the Cool has got a specific PIN or PIN code that is associated with his call sign. So you always type in your PIN code when logging a contact, and the log that you submit is viewable by anybody that has access to the Cool. So it's an open logbook. You can see who's communicating with you at what time and on frequency, at what mode, what they exchanged. And the idea of this was inspired by the RaDAR rally, or RaDAR sport, which I tried to promote when I did a QSO Today presentation in 2021, I think it is, where everybody could see the progress of the guys practicing RaDAR sport, and that onlookers could see, wow, who's the front runners here, and they all get involved as well. Now you can see on the screen that you're displaying there, Charlie, the blue Ys are those matching the the QSO data with frequency and time within 5 minutes. And if you have a look at those wires on the right-hand side, that is matching the exchanges between the two radio amateurs that have logged the contact. So it relies on the other or both radio amateurs to log the contact on the cool to be able to be evaluated correctly. And then I've got what they call a cool evaluator, where you can go and specify a particular date and time window, and then you can do an evaluation on the activity of the cool log. That's it over there. You just specify the dates and times, and then I write a particular section at the bottom there where you can just go and click submit and submit those dates and times, and it would evaluate the whole radar challenge or the radar rally or the contest within a second. And this idea I'm trying to promote as well for contesting in South Africa, because you get, some people that make 89 contacts, for example, while doing a contest, and other guys maybe do 15 or 25. But where are the guys lacking if they aren't managing 89 QSOs, and what are those QSOs? So if the logbook is open, we can all learn from each other. And that's the idea behind it. It's an open logbook that is intelligent.
Okay, so a couple questions. Is there an exchange then? You said the grid locator, but then you said it's not really necessary. Is there an exchange?
The initial ideas of the radar challenge, you had to exchange a 10-character grid locator, but the radar rally has relaxed that a little bit to make it more accessible, possibly to many different operators. The radar rally don't use the cool yet. I'm hoping that they one day will, because you would certainly see, who's active. Lucy has done a couple of logs there, Greg as well a while ago. So it would be nice to see who's active where, especially for the chasers. That if you have a look at the cool, we've got what we call the cool flag. It's very much like a spot, but it's specific to the cool itself.
Yeah.
So you can go and spot yourself, and you say, well, I'm active on this particular frequency, and the people can go and look for you there and hopefully make contact and do a proper exchange and get marked together. So the purpose is to attract about each other's activations and points and exchanges that they do accurately. It makes it.
I have to admit, I up until this interview, I didn't realize that that RaDAR, the program, is a little different than the rally. I understood that the rally was what the rally is, and I understood what RaDAR was, and I just thought that they were kind of both part of the same thing. And it sounds like you created RaDAR, and then you kind of gave your blessing for what is the other gentleman's name?
Greg Info KGL.
Greg. You gave your blessing for Greg to come up with the RaDAR rally, which is as an event that it just happens like on 2 days a year, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So that becomes more clear to me then. And so there's rules for RaDAR program, and then there's kind of maybe more relaxed rules for the RaDAR rally. It sounds like.
Yes. I might add there, Charlie. RaDAR was developed around about 2007, and that's I was just thinking today, how many years ago is that? And it's already 15 or 16 years ago. But just last year, we had 3 radar challenges in our contest manual here in South Africa per year. So it was in April, in July, to support our friend in Finland. Well, I've forgotten his name now. OH8STL, I think it is. he was inspired by radio, and he's very, very active on YouTube as well. So we had 3 challenges per year in April, July, and November. The RaDAR Rally does it in April and November, very, very similar, the first Saturday of the month. I actually terminated RaDAR in South Africa last year because of lack of support. And Greg asked me, can they continue with RaDAR in the USA? And, I said, certainly, because he gets a lot of activity there. And we're trying to build up activity here in South Africa again, and possibly we might start up. But I've suggested a smaller type of sprint to try and get the guys excited again, called the Cool Sprint, and that requires the use of the Cool, and it's a 1-hour sprint. It hasn't been accepted yet, but I'm trying to push for next year that it becomes a permanent fixture in our contest for the year 2024, to try and inspire people for an alternate way of logging contacts and also contest evaluations, because most contests, and probably the whole world is like that, they require that somebody send their logs in ADA format of Cabrillo or in an Excel spreadsheet, and that send that off via email to somebody on the other side administrating the contest. But that seems like a very outdated way of doing things, because if you log on the Cool, all your information is there already. Data that people have loaded up, and you say, well, evaluate this contact or contest, and within a minute or so you have your result. Otherwise, if you have to send these things via email, you might get a result a month later, which I was in IT for 30 years. I can't understand that people send paper logs in anymore via email. Now.
Yeah. Let me pause just a minute. I wanted to recognize Zippy. He, I think, makes a contribution almost every live we have, and so I really appreciate your contribution today, Zippy. You're a great supporter. Thank you so much. Let's see, there was a question here. I don't know if I quite understand. It's my friend Chuck. He says, "What are the exchange words on Cool?" Does that make sense to you?
It does.
Okay.
As I mentioned just now, we're going out and we are defining a secret sentence, and we only pass 1 word per evening via Morse code. So you go out into the field and you send your 1 word to the guys on the other side. He sends you 1 word. And at the end of the day, or at the end of the week, for example, after 5 days or 7 days, then you're going to know what the sentence was. It's just to attract the activity. So the words you see there as exchanges are those words that we have exchanged every afternoon.
Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. Yeah, we talked about that earlier a little bit, but I didn't quite understand that piece of it. So cool. All right, Brian and Dan, you take the con for a minute and ask questions if you have any. No?
I don't.
So actually, I was going to ask something kind of not on the subject, but ham radio related here. Tell me about the movie.
Which movie, Brian?
The one that your son apparently did. I've been trolling your QRZ page looking for some more things that we might not have covered. So I saw that on there, so I'm curious to hear about that.
That's a movie we made quite a while ago. As my son was quite interested in making movies then, and we decided we're going to make a RaDAR movie. And I still lived in town then, so we packed the RaDAR pack there, and we traveled all the way to where I stay now. We moved out of town, and the place where we stopped with the car and deployed in the bush there, that's actually the place that I bought as well, and I call that my RaDAR playground. And as a retired person, I maintain that big area and make walking paths. And right there, we did a RaDAR deployment using an NFED, and I built a Fuchs tuner. The Fuchs tuner design is on the internet as well. It works extremely well. and I made some contacts with my FT817, also sending Morse code using the mic button because I didn't have a Morse key with me, but we also did SSB contacts as well. So it was really a movie to try and promote amateur radio's rapid deployment amateur radio, and it was also a nice way of making a movie for my son as well. He's got other hobbies now. He was actually a ham as well when he was younger. He did his 5 words per minute Morse test, yeah, for a ZU license that was introduced later, and he got the call sign ZU6 Alpha India. But they don't do ham radio anymore. My grandson, which is now in matric, he liked playing with his granddad in the field when he was playing RaDAR. But it's difficult to inspire young people to do amateur radio because you really got to be involved. And maybe that's the problem we sit with the older people as well, trying to promote Morse code. But we're going to get it right. For sure, we're going to get it right.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, I haven't had a chance to watch it yet. I was just looking. I was like, I want to hear about this. That sounds like a good story.
Yeah, let's have a look at it, Brian.
I will. I will.
All right.
I was kind of surprised on when I was on Pinal that I actually got a call from WE4BY, Greg, who was actually doing RaDAR at the time. He was doing a joint RaDAR and POTA activity. So I actually had contact with that. So that was pretty cool. So we talked about that for a quick minute or two about what he was up to. So that was pretty fun.
Yeah. So we're almost out of time here, Eddie. So I had a couple more questions. Let's go with this one. What advice would you give new hams or just hams in general? I mean, the floor is yours. I mean, you have somebody who comes to you and says, "What is all this ham radio and why is it important, or what's it all about?" What advice would you give people?
I think being a radio ham allows you to see the world from a different view. To be able to communicate via radio in place of using the internet and cell phones. And I would advise young people to certainly, look at Morse code. We see these old World War II and World War I movies where people are using Morse code, but it's certainly still applicable. And well, this is the rig I use. I actually took it out, and that's my. Let's see, get it like that.
Yeah, you got a straight key there, and it's a
straight key and a QRP Labs QCX for 40 meters, and I just plug an NFED in there. Plug an NFED, a 20.3 meter long wire. And it doesn't have to be exactly tuned. I've got my impedance converter there and a couple of batteries on the bottom. And I switch it on and communicate using the Morse code. That's all I use nowadays. And, for young people coming into the world of amateur radio can be quite an expensive, there, Mike, there's my buddy. It can be quite an expensive hobby, but if we start with a simple system like this, the QCX is a lot cheaper. You can build it yourself, or you can buy them built, and it introduces the technical side of amateur radio as well. It's the best way to get involved with amateur radio. And once you're involved and you feel part of it, then it can only that people coming into a hobby and they get all these fancy toys and big radios and a computer, and he goes and he plays FT8, and you can get pretty bored with FT8 after 20 contacts. And then you think, well, is this amateur radio? That's not amateur radio. But getting it out into the field, putting it up and an antenna, I might add what I use for my end-fed, and end-feds on my antenna. I don't have to carry coax. What I use for a mast is 2 painters poles that are joined back to back with a aluminium tube, and that pushes up the center part of my end fed by about 5 meters above ground level, and that works fantastically. You know, you don't have to have anything too fancy to start with this amazing hobby of ours. I've been in the hobby for almost half a century, and I probably look very similar to that too. But you know that it's the best thing that ever happened to me in my life is to have become a radio amateur at the age of 16. Fantastic.
Great. That's awesome. Thank you so much, Eddie. You mentioned you said this is Mike, the experimental CQDX guy.
Sorry, Charlie, I was just reading what Mike said there.
Oh, it's Mark. Yeah, I was asking what his name was. You said it's Mark?
No, Mike.
Mike.
ZS6 Mike Sierra Whiskey.
Okay.
He promotes CW in South Africa passionately.
Good. Okay, he says keep in mind that the cool system, it's not only for CW, but it's also for sideband, and that's good for all the sideband guys.
Yes.
Yeah. Cool. Oh, we're getting about ready to wrap it up here. Give Dan and Brian one more opportunity to ask anything they want. Plus, if you guys in chat have any questions for Eddie at all, we're nearing the end here, so this is your opportunity. So, Dan or Brian?
I would imagine that, you know, the best thing about the program is that it teaches people how to be resilient in their communication, right? Getting out and exploring, you know, portable operations, you know, because you never know when it may be applicable to something that's going on, whether it's a disaster situation or learning about propagation or, you know, just experimentation in general. And especially with, you know, so many popular QRP radios, you know, there's many that, you know, you can assemble and kind of, you know, Eddie, to your point of, you know, everybody's got all kinds of gadgets, right? And we're a very disposable world now, right? Something no longer works or it goes out of favor, and it seems to be, you know, the landfills are full of all these gadgets. But amateur radio gives you, you know, possibilities of, you know, building these things and finding out what makes them tick. So, you know, you can better understand, you know, how technology works and maybe apply technology better in, you know, for your field operations.
Yep. Anything else, Bray?
No, I'm actually good. I think I got most of my questions in earlier.
Cool. All right. So one last thing here then. Ham Radio Survival and Prep says, I got my ticket when I was 17 and my sister was about 14 or 15. My dad, my aunt, and grandparents all got their tickets as well. There are still ham operators out there, young ham radio operators out there. Always more needed, but thanks for what you do, he says. So yeah, thank you as well. I want to add to that, just appreciate you being here today, Eddie. It's a real pleasure to have you on the show. I really am happy that you're here. Zippy says, thanks for the show, opening week of deer hunting.
So hunting. All
yeah,
right.
So most people are watching in the woods. So he's not only operating in the woods, but he occasionally listens in the woods. That's good. But anyway, thank you so much, Eddie. We're going to wrap it up here. You've been a super good guest. It's been very interesting getting to know you a little bit better and talking a little bit about the radar, but broader than that, just your passion about ham radio in general, and you've done it for almost 50 years, and how you are always trying new things to get more people involved. It's just amazing. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Charlie. Thank you, Brian, and thank you, Dan. You've been excellent hosts as well. This hour went very, very fast, and I appreciate all you guys are doing for amateur radio as well. And certainly I'm going to be watching your YouTube videos often. Thank you so much.
Yeah, very good. Okay, so stick around after we end so we can kind of do some wrap up, but we're going to end it here. Go ahead, Brian and Dan, and say your So your last little goodbyes, and we'll end it there.
I'm looking forward to getting back out in the field and trying some DX again. So that's my next passion. So
I'm looking forward to again getting some more activations in, having some more fun on the with my favorite operating mode. Going out with Dan and Charlie, hopefully with the three of us for an activation, and I'll be doing some aeronautical mobile next week. So they said week after Thanksgiving. So I'll post it out there, and I look forward to talking to some of you.
Okay, cool. All right, thanks everybody who's watching and listening, and thanks again to Eddie. We'll catch you guys later.
Cheers, guys.